It's Monday, August 14th. We do have a quorum present, and it is 6 p.m. So we will start this meeting. Janie's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Janie. And Paul's going to read the board mission statement.
Tulosa Midway Independent School District educates every student to be a lifelong learner, a person of integrity, and a positive contributor to society.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any public comment?
No, ma'am.
All right, we're moving on to informational item, agenda item number 1 for bond workshop.
Madam President, members of the board, we have with us an architect that we've employed to do pre-bond work, Sergio Lanais. Sergio is also our coordinating architect on the stadium project. He oversees all the payouts, makes sure that the general contractor is doing what they said they were going to do. So he and I and Mr. Hernandez have been in constant communication regarding what we presented to the community as far as sessions when we've had meetings, the survey, and we boiled it down to perhaps 3 propositions for you to consider, and he's going to present the scope of those tonight for your review.
Thank you. Good evening. Like Mr. Van Matry said, my name is Sergio Lanais. Thank you guys for letting me present to you. We've worked extensively to give you as much information as possible so that you guys are well informed and are able to carry out this message to the public if you choose to move forward with it. Like Mr. Van Matry said, we did break it down in 3 propositions. The bulk of it, the majority of it, is in the first proposition, and so we'll move forward. Obviously, our motto, just like Mr. Van Matry shares it with everybody, is it's our time, it's your time. Tulosa Midway is moving forward and creating a very big buzz. So as we just want it here, or can as we move forward with this, and in meeting with Mr. Van Matry and meeting with Mr. Hernandez, we looked at what the district's needs were. And of course, this also involved the community meetings. Previously, we had looked into an early college or an early childhood building, but the data came back, and the company that Mr. Van Matry hired really said that the community has a need for a new middle school. So what you see in front of you are what we're addressing in the bond. A new middle school, a new CTE facilities, security and safety upgrades, maintenance, of course, throughout the campuses, natatorium upgrades and renovations, and the baseball, softball, and tennis renovations. And we'll go into the details of that. And so our first part is the Proposition A. And under Proposition A is the middle school, the CTE center, the safety and security upgrades, and the scheduled maintenance. What you see on there is the current cost for middle schools right now. What we went and we met with principals and teachers from your current middle school and heard their feedback on what ideally they would like to see in a new middle school. And the biggest, most used words, sorry, not sure what's going on with this, but on your packet it should be correct. The most used words were modern and relevant. They want a building that really is of cutting edge technology. They want a building that they can feel a sense of pride and a sense that they're going to be able to teach the children in an environment worthy of Tulosa Midway. And so they asked for larger classrooms. They asked for combined science labs. They asked for, obviously, more technology. The agricultural science classroom and lab, they want a bigger one to be able to host more kids in there. Special education, having a few more classrooms that are for sensory and transition and life skills. The art classrooms to be bigger, and a larger cafeteria with maybe a food court style seating and serving lines. So all these ideas that the school teachers gave us and principals gave us and all this feedback, we came back and we made a master plan of it. We don't have a piece of land yet, so we are conceptually making this land our land, right? And so what you see in white is the actual middle school building or massing of it, and then the gray is all parking and roadways or entrances to the building. And one thing that they did mention is that they want it to be a standalone middle school. They don't want to be sharing a field. They don't want to be having to bus kids somewhere else for practice or an actual game. They want to have everything right then and there. So we included their own football field. We included their own track, their own tennis, and an athletic program. They want to start baseball and softball for middle school. So we did include those fields on there. We included to make sure that there's enough queuing area for when parents have to drop off kids. Again, overall, this is still all conceptual, right? We just kind of took all that feedback, we worked on it for 2 weeks, and this is what we came up with. What you see is here is the floor plan of it. 2 main wings for 7th and 8th grade. They want to make sure that they're separated. Under the wings, you see their own restrooms. Under the wings, you see staff restroom. And each wing has in the middle portion the science labs. In the science labs, you would have all the necessary requirements for testing, hood vents, equipment used for all these science experiments. Excuse me. A large cafeteria with an outdoor area to eat. And then a lot of the extracurricular activities, the bands, the choirs, the basketballs, a 2-court competition gym to make sure they're able to host tournaments, was feedback that they gave us. And of course, we did include the locker room area and of course some weight room area. Middle school's not big on weight room, but we want to make sure that it's in there to start prepping those kids to be able to lift weights, and once they move to the high school, already have the fundamentals of that there. And then the last pink item over here that you see is an auditorium. We don't want to call it a performing arts, but it would have the same requirements that a performing arts would have. Again, going into, it's a standalone school that you don't have to go somewhere else for band concerts. You don't have to go somewhere else for graduations, for any type of function. It's all in this campus. Some quick renders, again, going back to the idea of this is a new, modern, relevant school. So you see a large massing. Yes, you see a lot of glass, but this is what's relevant now when we come and talk about educational buildings. And so what those materials are, we're not telling you exactly what they are. Again, this is all conceptual, but the idea is that it becomes this modern building in this modern shape so that your students of today feel like they're keeping up with everything, not just what they're learning, but the technology of it, and they feel good about going to school in a building that's keeping up with their technology. Another view of it, making sure that we have a good entrance for all the students to be coming in and being dropped off. Excuse me. Thank you. That's
Your water's right there.
So, how did we come up with this cost? We went in and we looked at the latest middle school contracts that have been awarded. We looked at Rio Grande City, Fredericksburg, and Judson ISD. Middle schools that went out to bids in February and in March in the square footage area of 137 to 189. Construction costs from 45 million to 80 million. And then the last column, you see the cost per square foot at 328, 442, and 423. So what we did is, we combined those three costs per square footage and got an average of $400. The outlier, Corpus Christi just went out for 2 middle school bids. Their middle school numbers are not available what has been awarded yet because it bid out late July and 1st of August. But under their bond, they have estimated $90 million and $88 million. And if we break that down per cost per square foot, it jumps up to 568 and 566. We feel that's too high. When those numbers come in, we'll actually take a look at what it is. We feel that there's something there that they're not telling us, because actual construction costs are in the $400 a square foot. But because we want to be proactive and not get, lack of a better word, burned, and say we didn't budget enough money, we included those two numbers as a separate cost so that we could see what the differences are.
Can
Yes,
I ask
ma'am.
you something?
Of course.
These are not 4-H schools, though. These are, Corpus Christi for sure is not a 4-H school.
course.
Judson is not, Rio Grande is not. So in breaking this down like this, are we considering population or?
We're considering the square footage of the building itself and what's included in the building. All these buildings included football and track. All these buildings included middle school classrooms with science labs. All these buildings included the administration. The things that were included in our building, they included it. So we wanted a comparison of that. Obviously, you're correct. They're not the same district level that you are, but the only difference in that would be the population of the kids. And the only one that's the biggest one is Judson. Their building is for 1,000 kids. The other ones, Fredericksburg was for 750 and Rio Grande City was for 500, so it was a little smaller. So if we look at what we feel is more of a reasonable price at $400 a square foot, at the design that we came up with, the teacher's input, is 165,000 square feet. Where did we get 165,000 square feet? On the right side, we have a small breakdown of all the classrooms, the special education, the ag rooms, the library, and a lot of these are still estimates, but the biggest ones are your auditorium at 45,000 square feet, and of course, the gymnasium at 36. So right there, we're already looking, at over 80,000 square feet. So if you take that and 80,000 for classroom space, circulation, and any type of utility space, that's where we come up with 165,000. So once we included those two school numbers from Corpus, again, yes, you're absolutely right. They probably went above and beyond and made this over-the-top design, but we wanted to make sure that, like I said, we're not burned. So we didn't go as high as the 568, but we put it in the average at 465, and really, the number comes out $10 million more, which is a lot of money, but again, those $10 million will end up covering the soft costs that are typically forgotten when we go off for bonds. It'll cover your furniture, it'll cover your equipment, it will cover a portion of your professional fees, which are your architects, your engineers, your surveyors, part of that price. The next portion of this Proposition A is the new CTE Center. I believe Mr. Van Matry had already shared some of these images with you. The only thing I'd like to kind of go over more, of course, you have all these classroom spaces in there. And we talked about trying to fit it into the site of where the high school is already. You have the floor plans. But we initially looked at a rendering, kind of making it, again, going into a more modern feel, modern style, making sure that we break up the facade that's there. if you go and look at the high school, you have your Performing Arts Center, beautiful. And then on the left side of that is your typical brick wall. So if we actually fit it in there, we're able to kind of break up that brick wall and make a more interesting design. And what we did is, with a little bit of the extra time that we had, we made a little bit more of a realistic render so that you can see more or less what it would look like, instead of just kind of a quick sketch that we did.
So that would just go along with the front of the school that we already have, or that would be the front of the school now?
It would go along with it. We're creating a separate entrance for this building only. Your main entrance for the high school would stay the same.
Okay.
There are access points from this building to the high school, but it wouldn't take over the main entrance. Your main entrance for school would still be existing.
Will they be enclosed, or will the kids have to walk outside to get to the CTE building?
So if you look at the site plan, and again, very conceptual, the idea, it does show it far away from here, but the idea would be to enclose this one. This one would stay as an outdoor one, and then your main entrance to this building being here. So this access here, we would be able to enclose. I just didn't want to show it butted up against the building and be confusing that it's gonna hit the building or anything like that.
I'm just thinking of the safety of the kids,
Of
that's why
course.
I'm asking.
Absolutely. So the cost breakdown of the CTE, a little bit higher than the middle school because of the high-end equipment that's there. We're talking from animal research to science to plant research, welding, very high-end technology. So we go up to 550 square feet. The design that we did is 2 stories, the bottom story being 29,000 square feet, the top story being 25,000, which gets us to the 54,000. At the 550, we're looking at 29,700,000. Again, this is already including those soft costs. This is already including the equipment as part of the full construction cost of it. Can we, or whoever your architect is, go lower? Absolutely. But right now, this is more or less what things are costing. Can another architect go higher? Absolutely, right? But that's not our goal. Our goal is to fit your budget.
Real quick, you may have said this earlier, but when you keep referencing they and the teachers, are those our teachers you talked to? Or
Yes,
these
sir.
previous
No,
clients?
no, no. Your teachers actually came up with a PowerPoint. Your
Okay.
teachers actually came up with a list of all the rooms
Perfect.
that they required for this building.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were listening to that.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And then the other 2 portions of this Proposition A are the safety and security upgrades and the scheduled maintenance. Under safety and security, we know that we have to do the vestibules for all campuses for security. We know we need to upgrade all your cameras and the coverage of the cameras, along with some sort of gun detection system.
Bless you.
Bless you. With all that being said of upgrading technology, we do have to upgrade your server/cloud storage. So it's not just a matter of getting the hardware, it's also upgrading the software to meet all that. There are some doors that Mr. Hernandez feels we need to upgrade, the lifetime doors. All the doors for the classrooms need to be updated for safety. And some of these high visibility exterior doors and windows, we would like to infill some of that so it's not such an easy access point for someone to actually break it and go. Along those lines, adding a 3M safety security film for the schools, which makes the buildings almost bulletproof. To that, I don't want to say the word bulletproof because 3M doesn't say it, but that's the goal, that film makes it very close to being bulletproof.
We're thinking ahead on these windows and all these new renderings, we're thinking ahead to where we're not getting in a spot where we have to put film later, right? Like for all your
Correct.
glass.
It would already be a part of it.
We're
Yes,
thinking
sir.
about that now. Okay.
Absolutely. Again, going over this list with Patrick, Mr. Hernandez, we looked at a cost of $22 million on safety and security. And all these are upgrades to this system. Mr. Hernandez informed me of a new bus riding tracking notification system where it'll notify everybody, the parent, hey, your child is here, your child is about to be dropped off. As well as an e-pass system telling which kids are where at all times, making sure that
For the hallways, it's a e-hall pass, and that way we limit the number of kids that are out in the hallway at the same time. It tracks it, it's on a phone app, they use it. If the principals have problems with two kids that don't play nice together, they can, on the app, they can set it to where two people won't go to the restroom at the same time.
From the same classroom?
From the same classroom or throughout the building, the whole school.
The whole school.
It's currently, the closest school that's using it, they had great success is Ingleside. They're really enjoying it.
No, what I read up on it, Patrick, is that the kids ask the teacher permission to leave the room. How are we gonna know from which classroom these kids are going to, say, to the bathroom? Or how does this e-pass work to
So it's all
the
online.
tracking?
So everything's tracked either on their phone, their Chromebook, they can
Chromebook,
request it
okay,
on
the
their Chromebook.
Chromebook, okay.
All the kids have the Chromebooks in the
Right,
class,
okay,
so they
got
would
it.
just say, hey, I need to go to the restroom, and it puts me in line, and it lets me know when I can get up and go to the restroom.
Good, okay.
Now, I just want to backtrack, sorry, to go back to the windows. You know, we talked about that we're gonna try to put brick up to a certain area of the windows, in safety and security, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the front of these schools and I'm seeing that we're kind of going back to the same thing that the elementary has that, or the intermediate has that we're trying to prevent.
Again, these renderings, I'll speak to them, they're very just conceptual. It's
Okay,
not-
okay, I just want to make sure we're not gonna,
There's 2 weeks worth of work.
Let's not do
Very
that.
conceptual, it is not a definitive design.
Okay.
Once if you pass the bond, well, you would go looking for an architect, and then all that information that we've gathered, we share, if I'm not the architect, whoever the architect is shared, and then they would actually do a design.
Gotcha.
This is just conceptual so that you get an idea what it could look like. But in the fairness of it, or to share, is more of very conceptual, like Patrick said, but some of these modern buildings with glass, we would look into actual bulletproof glass.
Steve, you talking about this bus monitoring system, is that the same one that the CCISD is trying to put in?
I'm not sure,
Buses?
I'm not sure which brand they're looking at, but there's a couple, the two that I'm looking at, the parents have it on their app, and like in the mornings, it'll give them an alert, the bus is 5 minutes away from your stop. They'll be able to see what time their student got on the bus, what time they got off, and then in the afternoons, it'll say, little Johnny's expected to be at his normal bus stop in 5 minutes. Or the bus broke down, little Johnny's expected to be here in 25 minutes.
That's what I was reading on.
It gives the parents a lot of information
Yes.
at their fingertips.
Thank you, Patrick.
And then the last portion of the Proposition A is the scheduled maintenance. Again, this is Patrick and myself getting together and sharing pretty much what the district needs immediately. Roof repairs, pretty much all campuses need roof repairs or roof replacements. All the HVAC, the rooftop units that are on these schools are aged or are creating leaks. So you have to replace the whole unit. But while replacing the unit's gonna solve one issue, these ducts have not been cleaned. So at the same time, you could do remove the unit, clean the ducts, and bring in a new unit so that it's all cleaned as if it was a new system. With that being said, you need a new controlling system to make sure that the air that's being pushed is being monitored and being controlled by a central system, so that if a room gets hot, why is it hot? Let's throw more air in there. Or if something is going wrong, the control system will let Patrick know, hey, there's something wrong over here. So all that is part of the HVAC package. Parking lot, pardon me?
We have to maintain it once we put it in.
Correct. And so this is the maintenance portion of it. What we've looked at is trying to make sure that the package to maintain it typically will come with the control systems so that whoever is installing it provides some sort of maintenance package, a revolving maintenance package, not just a one-year warranty, but,
That
you
will
know,
work.
5 to 10-year contract type thing. Parking lot repairs, all the campuses needed, not only the repairs, but also being able to have the right signage, controls for all the traffic that's going through there. There's some asbestos that needs to be abated in the high school, and once we abate it, we need to put new flooring for it. That's part of this maintenance package.
Real quick, Patrick, didn't you talk about on these ACs, a chiller system or some kind of like cooling tower system?
Yeah, so at the high school, everything's on a chiller system except for the exterior.
These would be
buildings.
the same?
Yes, so it's
Would be
included
like a
in.
cooling tower
Yeah, Well,
system?
the cooling tower is new, so hopefully we don't need that for another 20 years,
Right,
25 years.
but these would be
the-
on a-
The air handler packages, all the chillers and the air handlers on top of the building.
Okay.
They're due for replacement.
How old are those?
2008, when I first got here, I got here in 2007, they were replaced in 2008. So they've already done their time. We're starting to see major failures, like the bearings, the cages are disintegrating. So it's time for it. And then the controls, I think Paul, Mr. Mostella, you were the only one on the board at the time. We did a performance contract with TAC, which is now Schneider. We would never do a performance contract again. That was,
Do we have lessons learned like that documented?
Yes, well-
Do you have lessons learned, like, I hear a lot of, we should have never done, not today or not from you, but a lot of times people say, we should have never done, like, we need to make sure we have those documented somewhere that we know we're not doing this again. Performance agreement.
And that's one of those things that was the in thing at the time, and all the districts got burned. TM was not the only one that did a performance contract, but we've all learned that we will never do a performance contract again. Their controls, Snyder is probably one of the best companies for controls. We'll negotiate a contract to get the controls and then a maintenance contract, but there's no guarantee that they're gonna save us X amount of dollars and that they're gonna reimburse us if we don't. The water, the upgrades in the water, the electrical upgrades were good because at that time it was T12s, we switched the lighting to T8. But we can do that ourselves. We can go out for a bid and switch to LED lighting. We don't need to go through a company like that. The one that did hurt us, I think, quite a bit was the water savings, the low flush toilets, the urinals and all that. We've actually had to go on and replace a lot of those toilets with the higher flushing units. It was causing us so much plumbing issues by trying to save money on the water.
Especially at the intermediate.
Was that when did we do the wireless urinals at the intermediate? We got rid of those.
Well, that was, yes, so the building was built with it and we got rid of those, the Falcon.
It didn't
Water.
take, what did it take, less than a year?
That was one of the very first things I did.
But back to what I was saying, those are the details we need to be thinking about. You
Yes.
guys need to be thinking about, so we don't build and say,
Right.
we
So
shouldn't have done.
in this process, once we do select an architect and everything, and Paul will tell you, when we start to do something, we bring it in, everybody to do it, it's called a charrette. And so then we all brainstorm all
Like
that.
a cold eyes review,
Yeah.
kinda, okay, cool.
I like it.
They do it.
Additional from building maintenance, you guys need new buses. Patrick needs new maintenance vehicles. And with that, also, he'd like to implement a white fleet to be able to move people around. And that's pretty typical of school districts now.
Patrick, how much does a bus cost right now? I just want the community to know how much one bus costs right now.
Just plain Jane, nothing really fancy, it's about 110,000.
It's gone up considerably.
And do you buy all Plain Jane, or do you buy other buses for like the sports teams that travel?
We've never had that luxury.
We should
We've
think
always
about
bought
that.
Plain Jane.
We should think about that. If we're asking for a bond, we should think about our kids going to Laredo Harmony in a yellow dog, right? Like, that's not ideal. So that's just, again, something we should think about in this.
Or get a charter.
Installing a backup generator for the technology and the food service area. Again, those are your kind of backbones of school districts. We don't want to lose power to those. And then painting throughout campuses, repairing joints, repairing exterior walls, some of the brick, the mortar's falling out, so we need to point and tuck some of that. and make sure we seal that to make sure there's no moisture infiltration going through that. So all this is part of your scheduled maintenance package. Our estimated cost, again, going through this big list with all the campuses is around $30 million. And again, we're not looking at a high-end bus, but we can certainly start looking into that for sure. Then we go into the other propositions. Mr. Van Matry has mentioned to the board that we can't include some of these as part of the first proposition because of the state law where natatoriums, performing arts centers, and athletics need to be separate so that the community that votes understands where the money is going. So under the natatorium upgrades and maintenance, we're looking at $7,800,000 to upgrade it, which includes installing a HVAC system in the pool, replacing the bulkhead, replacing the starting blocks, which is something that was mentioned recently, adding an overhead door for some of the equipment that needs to be installed, upgrading the filter and pump system, upgrading the chlorine and acid pump system, the scoreboard, the heater, touch pads, sound systems, and actually working on the bond system for the cables that are below the deck. And again, all that boils down to $7,800,000. And that is included as a separate package. Again, we have Proposition A, this is Proposition B. And then our last Proposition C, having some athletic upgrades, which include adding turf to the baseball. I repeated baseball, I apologize, I should say softball. Adding turf to baseball and softball fields. Apologies. Resurfing the tennis courts, adding some shaded areas for your tennis courts, repairing the seats at the baseball and softball fields, upgrading sound systems, scoreboards, a lot of electrical work, and restrooms and water fountains for the tennis courts.
Shades for the baseball, softball stadium.
Our estimated cost for this is $5 million. Mr. Van Matry has gotten some quotes on this. We want to make sure that we include some of the soft costs in there, so we went a little bit higher than what his estimate was. We're looking at about a 15% escalation on it, just to make sure, again, we don't want the school district to fall short on some of these items. And so your overall, if you have all three propositions passed, we're looking at $171,225,000, which is a little bit over what Mr. Van Matry had originally estimated, but we just want to make sure that everything that needs to be budgeted for is accounted for. The last thing we need is for you guys to promise something and we fall short on money.
Questions, comments?
The one last question, I know I'm asking a lot. The auditorium, the new junior high,
Yes, sir.
is that sized to the amount of kids that are there, or are we just building like?
No, it is sized to the amount of kids there. We're looking for the full
750, I think.
full-size school to be for 750 kids. So your full-size auditorium will sit 750 kids.
Okay.
And our current auditorium at the high school are, what does it seat? Because it doesn't seat that many.
490.
400.
Okay, as long as we're getting an auditorium that can seat more people.
Absolutely. As well as your gymnasiums that are 2 courts to hold tournaments with more seating.
Okay.
I was gonna ask, next week, can you provide the capacity of each of the campuses with the new middle school?
I think we can right now.
Of course. Oh, on the previous, the ones that we got numbers for?
That's for 750, I believe.
Yeah, so our middle school is for 750. If you're asking for these middle schools,
No, what all of Tolosa looks like.
What it'll do with the new
The
building
fifth
to
and sixth that
shift.
stay here, what are they gonna be
Understood.
at? And
Okay, yes.
The-
Well, we can probably do that right now. The junior high will do 2 things. It'll build, actually 3 things. It'll provide, obviously, a new 7th and 8th grade campus. by moving the fifth grade to the middle school and having 2 grades there, you'll reduce the student population and we'll be able to do training there. By moving the second grade to the intermediate, that campus's population will stay consistent. There'll be 3 grades. And now the primary turns into an early childhood center because it has bathrooms in every room. And that population will be reduced because pre-K won't have nearly the number that we currently have with kinder, first, second, and pre-K.
Yeah, but the numbers of head count of student, square footage of campus, and then the utilization.
As far as with the old campuses,
Because at the primary school, we're
Because-
like
I think she's saying after when we get this bond, what is it gonna
Yeah.
move to?
Yeah.
Kinda like what we talked about with Mr. Alvarado, about we don't wanna build this CTE and we're
So,
at
like,
100% already.
The primary was like 116% utilization, now it would go down to what? The intermediate was like 109, but that's gonna stay the same,
well, let me
so,
look at today's numbers. So your intermediate campus, as of today, had 892 students. Depending on, I'll get you these numbers, depending on the difference in enrollment between grade 5 and grade 2, they're generally fairly consistent. Now, with the middle school, today it was at 818. A good guess is the 7th and 8th grade figures, or the 6th and 7th grade figures, don't equal 750. That's building for growth.
yeah, correct, because none of our classes, or the largest classes we've had are near the 300 student count, but not consistently, right?
Yeah, the biggest one right now, 4th grade's like at 319, 316.
Yep.
The primary campus, and help me with the math here, the primary campus last year at 886 was deemed based on what were their name,
Cooperative strategy.
cooperative strategies. Based on the analysis they did at that enrollment figure, it was 125%.
Oh, that's what it was.
Okay. However,
So,
that-
yeah, so it was, well, no,
that
116 was
enrollment has
the-
reduced. Today, there were 774 students there. So if you do the math, if 886 is 125% over capacity, what would 774 be? I'm sure you can do that with your engineering background real quick.
That's where algebra comes in handy.
And so.
Basically 100 kids difference.
And so the middle school campus right now, which is housing 3 grades, is at 818. And I think that the analysis on the middle school
Goes
was.
down to 109.
Okay,
So we're still over.
Yeah, so I would like to see what it is today, our utilization, and what it will be post-bond, so we can ensure we're not still over.
Okay.
Or make some adjustments where
we can
needed.
definitely do
Yeah.
that.
Where it's not
It is.
at, where it's.
Yeah, we may need more square footage to be
Correct.
ready for the next 10 years.
Because the middle school is definitely built for that.
Now,
I want to make sure,
if you'll remember, Paul had a concern, Paul A. had a concern when we did the initial CTE presentation that the new CTE would just meet our current needs. It will meet our future needs because we're going to keep the current facilities that we have at the high school for CTE as well.
What is the current square footage of the high school?
Oh, gosh.
I can get it for you, I don't have my laptop with me. I've got a chart with all the square
How,
footage.
how underutilized is the high school now?
65%.
Yeah.
As of last year. Their enrollment's gone up, but certainly not enough to encompass that. You want to talk about your
Because our primary and intermediate campuses are the
You
ones
wanna,
that
you
are,
wanna
that
talk
are
about
busting
how
at
much
the
room we have or
seams.
lack of?
So we currently have one open classroom in the entire high school that is not being utilized. That 65% is based on a classroom only holding 25 people. But because we have like our health science has a cap of 15 kids per, and they use 2 classrooms, one for a lab, one for an actual classroom. So really, it's from a perspective, there's 50 kids that should be in that room. However, it's only being utilized for 10 kids at a time because that's the max that program allows, 10 to 15. We have our law enforcement class, utilizes 1 classroom, and then as we're moving into Coastal Bend College, we're getting forensics, that's going to cause another classroom to be used, because Coastal Bend's able to bring that over. So as we continue to go on down that road of expanding Warpath, the amount of room needed is going to increase, and our standard room, which holds 25, might not be good for a program, that it's just, that's what it holds, 25, but there's only 10 to 15 kids using it at a time, because that's the safe cap that Coastal Bend College has put on it. Does that make sense?
So saying it's 65% utilization gives a false narrative.
It's about
that there-
95%.
That there's hallways that, yeah.
Right.
And so why are we limited, why is the college putting limitations on class sizes?
It's usually like health science, there's a cap of how many kids they can supervise, so if they're doing phlebotomy and EKG. So they're sticking people with blood. And so they want to pay attention to those kids. So that's the cap that Del Mar uses, Coastal Bend, that the actual overseeing body sees. You also have, for instance, if we're doing anything with cutting, with lasers or something like that, that is very limited to the amount of kids we can have at one time, or else it's just not safe. You think about a science lab with a built-in class, it's double the square footage, but it only holds 25 people, because the max by state is 24, that it should hold so they can continue to do labs. So it's double the square footage with only one single classroom being utilized, while the other classroom kind of just waits there to be used.
Welding. Physics was.
And we're out of room in some, like welding, there's no capacity. We are done. Even with the new upgrades, we're still turning down kids.
I hear that.
So with the new CTE on the welding, we're gonna be able to do 4 labs, each lab holding 14 and 14, 28, 56 total stations on both areas,
In addition to what we have.
in addition to what you have.
Nice.
Yeah, so at the primary and intermediate, so understanding what capacity looks like now, and then also, I know just their lunchrooms were a concern of, they were super tight at both of those campuses, that's accurate. So if there's, I don't know if anything that can be done in that regard.
The bond, Ms. Villalobos, I don't see creating additional lunch cafeteria spot at the intermediate. Certainly at the primary
Okay.
and the middle school. But I just don't see it at the intermediate.
And then, I guess those are my bond questions, and then my next questions are things that we're not covering with the bond. So, and I wrote down admin stuff, ACC remains where it's at, and then, our DAEP situation, where, right? And then is there any, that's just me thinking, but are there any other key items that we may not be covering?
There may be some maintenance issues that we're not aware of that could crop up.
Unknown unknowns are okay.
Yeah. You know, I'm uncomfortable with the number. It's a lot of money. But there, particularly with Proposition A, I don't think there's anything in there that's a want versus a need.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Absolutely. We agree.
It's all a need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a tight spot we have to get out of.
Patrick, administration, I can't think of anything that we've left out because of costs or.
Fernandez was very gracious to talk to us about what we needed. So I feel comfortable saying the high school has got what is needed, but you're right, unknown unknowns are, you know, we never know when we open up at the high school, something's
The
gonna
good
happen.
thing is, I went and I looked back through my calendar, and we've had 39 scheduled meetings with various stakeholders on this, and plenty of opportunities for input. There may be, but I'm not aware.
I think that the good part of this to me is that this attacks a large portion. I mean,
Every kid.
We're in a tight spot. I've talked about it before. Going as many years as we did without any growth in bonds is really, so when you go ask for 172 million, we have to let the community know we didn't ask for anything for a lot of years. This isn't gonna solve all our problems, but this is gonna get us on the right path. And some of those things, the DAEP, we gotta get creative with the 1 acre lot we have on Tolosa Road. What can we do there to build a building? Can we get our attendance up, get our general fund up, things like that? We're gonna have to get creative with on some of that, but it's very good to keep it in front of us so that we don't end up back here asking for, a huge amount of money to play catch up.
And when was the last bond?
11.
2011.
The only other
It's a
major
long
thing I
time
would
ago.
put on the bond, but it's not the time for it, is our maintenance facility, the bus barn maintenance facility. They're all
Yeah.
antiquated, but we've gotta fix the campuses first. And that
Those are-
comes
yeah.
later.
I mean,
That's something we've overlooked every time, isn't it? Yeah,
Again, the focus is the students.
yeah, mainly.
On your square footage breakdown for the CTE Center, you have 2 welding classes, 2 instrumentation tech. Are those square footages each, or is that
Correct,
total?
each. So you would multiply it times 2, 1,400 times 2, the lab 2,500 times 2.
Okay, because that only totaled 29,000.
We're also not gonna take all the money out at one time either.
No,
So we're not
not
gonna
at
get,
all.
our stakeholders in our community, property owners are not gonna get hit all at one time for the total amount of money.
I'm assuming Philip and I and Victor, it'll be a 3-year sell.
Because that's what we've done in the past, was over 3 years, because the last one that was set up, it was a 2011 bond, but when was the last construction?
It wasn't
It was
until
completed.
14,
At 14,
Yeah,
15?
we finished the ag barn.
Yeah, the Agborn,
was the last one,
yep, the last one, that was part of it, and that was in what year was that?
15,
That
16.
might have been 15, 16.
You also,
It was 15, 16.
Paul, I'm sure you remember this, the bond was short, and how much you had to borrow some for M and O and
It
you
took 2
fund
million
balance?
We took 3 million for our share of the domes and 2 million to finish the majority of the projects. The only thing we didn't do from the original bond was we didn't do anything to the old ag. We didn't renovate the old ag facility to something else. That was on there, but that dropped off.
Yeah, 'cause
That's
that
the only thing that
was
dropped
gonna
off.
make that,
And how much did you borrow out of M and O to supplement?
2 million to finish the bond projects.
Which is the reason why we have to look to the future right now.
And we also have to, whatever we think, we need to put a little bit of bubble of safety in there
100%.
to get this, to accomplish this, because we can't do everything at one time, and costs are going to continue to rise and change, so that's why.
Yeah, I mean, these things right here will revolutionize the district. Like, this is major, major.
It'll separate us.
This will separate us from a lot, separate us from the back. We just have to have people understand that, we are catching up, but this separates us. And then next time, we get to be really creative and say, man, Patrick's maintenance facility, and, we get
The
to
bus
think
barn.
ahead. That's where the strategic planning and a lot of the things we hadn't maybe followed through with over the years, it's all old, but it's still for the group that's here and the group going forward, they're gonna be here for years, and we need to be thinking like that. So this is exciting.
Well, it's because we have to plan for growth, because it will happen
Well, we got
eventually.
kids depending on
100%.
us to be able to educate them. If we can't put them in a seat and a desk, and our teachers are trying to teach with 35 kids in a classroom, that's not how we educate at TM. So, it's not the education I got, and generations below me deserve better education, so.
Any other questions? The scope of the bond?
Just have to make sure the public understands it completely.
Is that, will we spell that out in the bond? You talk about, it's not all at once, it's over. Is there gonna be a plan that says, junior high's first, junior high in athletics or whatever, we'll have that spelled out so that we can communicate that, right?
Yeah, we have to.
Absolutely.
like Patrick would have to say what's the first round of AC replacements that are most
Okay.
critical.
And maintenance.
Good.
Those first.
Because the more we can communicate, the more we can get people to understand. I mean, it's all communication, right?
And if we hire a professional firm,
For sure.
they'll definitely do that in
Exactly.
conjunction with our message. Our message will be their message.
That's the main thing.
I know after the last election, some of the community feedback was they wanted it separated out so they could pick and choose. Does this survey that we did supersede that feedback? Would it be smart to separate that big item into two, propositions?
The messaging people have told me, when I asked that question, that you need to watch how many propositions you get, that Proposition A is all of academic and maintenance. That was their advice.
That's what we've heard in the past.
Which makes sense because, well, at least to me, because if you break it up and say one passes and one doesn't, you're still not being able to meet the needs of all the students. If it was broken up.
Yeah, I think the B and C are, even though the natatorium serves an educational need, it is our swim team. It is Learn to Swim. It's different from a new junior high. It's different from an HVAC.
I mean, just think about it from an age. When I was in school, we built it, I don't know when they built an auditorium, but it felt like it was relatively new when I was in school.
Yeah.
We have done zero.
Zero.
Maybe we did a little bit, maybe we put a scoreboard in there or something, but
We redid the bathrooms.
Tell them about what we've done.
About 2.5 million to cool deck.
2.5 over 30 years is not much. Like, we gotta be thinking ahead in that manner. I keep saying the same thing, but we have a natatorium. We were one of the first ones. We were like, TM has a natatorium. People were busing to our school to swim practice. And now, people don't want to have meets at our school because we don't have AC, we don't have security, we don't have, like, we have to. And that's what we need to sell the community. If we're gonna get back to where we were, we're getting there with the educationists, the teachers, the leadership, we're getting there. But now we gotta get everything else back there so that we can truly say, remember they used to have the shirt that said, what was it? I go to TM one day, you'll work for me when I went to school.
Yeah.
You may not be able to sell those shirts nowadays, but when we were in school, they had shirts like that, So we need to get back there to where the prestigious place, so. And I think we're on the right path.
So put us
I
there.
applaud everybody there. This will get us there. And then from there, it's our job to make sure we stay as a beacon, so that's my spiel.
And then, communicating to the community that, yes, we realize this is 4.75 times larger than the last bond we passed. However, so much time has elapsed, and it's all needed.
And we're trying to think of the future, not just what we need today.
Yep.
Yeah. Take, for instance, the fast-growing districts, what they're having to do.
I think there's
They
two.
could probably tell us about some of those.
there's 2 points that I think we really need to be cognizant of when we talk to people. A year ago, we asked for 98 million. Now it's 171. What's the deal? Are you punishing us for voting no? We can't, we have to articulate that very well.
It has to be.
Yes.
It has to be, because if it's not, and most schools that have run into that issue have not articulated it well enough, just as ones that have come back after failed bond after failed bond, like Bridge City was a good example, and some others that have done it. And it all came through communications. And they got new leadership, and they had a new plan, and they got people that came in and helped them, just like what Mr. Van Matre is referring to, because that helped get the message out. And everyone else that was involved, they had people that were on board with it, and all the naysayers, when they went to the social media with one complaint, the people that were behind it hit the same media in force, so that helped them. So it's a community effort, getting everyone involved and getting the key stakeholders bought in, or sold, I guess is what you'd call it.
The other thing I
Make sure
think we have
plans.
to address, particularly me, is the stadium. The 5.5, why did we spend 5.5 million on the stadium and not security? Clearly, in reflection, I wouldn't have made that recommendation. I was totally convinced that we could articulate to the community that we were being good stewards and using a savings account that had ballooned over the COVID years and put it back and not ask the community for that. And I was very confident the bond would pass. Again, in reflection, I would not have made that recommendation. But at the time, I thought it was the right thing to do. And I'll tell the public that.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yes, it always,
Always is.
2020. And plus the fact that when that decision was made, that was before some catastrophic events occurred as well. So what brought security, safety and security to the forefront, so.
So that's the scope. Any other questions? Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you very
Good
much.
discussion. Thank you very
That was
much.
Very good, very good. Change the baseball and softball.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 2, a report on the bond financial impact.
Before Victor gives his presentation, it's already outdated.
In a good way?
No,
Oh,
no, not in a good way.
No. Mark.
And that's why I came to the meeting a little late. We were huddled in Philip's office. My understanding of the agreement between our largest taxpayer and Nueces County was that the appraised value that initially was reported would go down, and subsequently our largest taxpayer, instead of paying 70%, would pay 100%. Now, the agreement that they reached for 2019 and 22 was that they pay 90%, and that's coming in. The email that I received at 5:36 from Mr. Kiesnick was that our largest taxpayer has communicated that they intend to pay 100% of 2022 values, not 2023. And I was under the impression that it was 2023 because that was the certified values that we got.
Yeah.
So with that information, that's going to impact 4 pennies.
You're looking like I just looked an hour ago.
That's going to impact 4 pennies from what Mr. Quiroga is going to report to you, which is still, and do we know what the impact for M and O is gonna be? Is it still gonna be 24, or is it gonna be?
Yeah, that's not gonna change. That's the new state formula. That doesn't, collection rates don't affect what the state compresses you up to. That's still gonna be the 0.7575, which is the almost 25-cent reduction. That's not gonna change.
And I think a good argument could be made that with our 313 going online, that the small amount of bonds that we would sell in 2014 would really have no impact on the INS rate, 30 million with our values. I mean, I don't expect you to do that in your head, but minimal, if any. If 171 million is going to have a 13 penny impact, 30 million would be greatly reduced, fair to say. And then the property values, I believe, will continue to follow the trend of going up. How that affects our highest taxpayer, I don't know. But still, paying 100% of 2022 values is still better than paying 70 and 90%.
Agreed.
What I'm gonna find out tomorrow is what is the actual 23 certified values of the West plant. Compare that to what 100% of their 22 value is, so I can get a better idea of what our actual collection percentage is gonna be for INS. Now, the good news is, because Ms. Villalobos said, when I said, well, we're gonna try to keep the INS rate at 15 and we'll defease, and you said, well, why not 16? So I did the calculation what the county will let us do is, you take your lowest collection rate from the last 3 years, which is 89 point something, right under 90%. So I went and calculated what would it take to do that, to keep the rate at 16 cents. And then using that rate, the county came back and said, okay, you can go up to 16.77. And that's what I'm gonna put, the ad's gonna go, the notice is gonna go in the paper Friday. So we could adopt an INS rate up to that amount. I'm gonna get my numbers tomorrow so I can see if we might not have any room to do defeasance, if the actual collection rate, the 16 will give us enough to pay what we need to pay, not including a defeasance possibly. We're gonna go and do a resolution for the defeasance, and I was asking Victor, I'm gonna go and ask you to do that on the 28th, but we might not need to do that because maybe my actual collection rate is just gonna be enough to actually pay what we owe and not to defease any more debt. I'm gonna ask you to do the defeasance anyway, in case we can, and the defeasance will have a big number. Maybe that defeasance number will just be much smaller than but we have the capacity to defease what we can. We'll just have to see how it works out. But once I get the number tomorrow, I'll get a better idea of, I'll take that delta between what their certified values are and what they say they're gonna pay. And so then I'll say, well, the rest of it, 98%, add what Flint Hills is gonna pay, and then come up with what the actual collection rate will be and see where we are. The good thing is, with the settlement, we have a pretty good, I'm gonna have over a $2 million fund balance in the INS fund, so the INS fund has a bigger cushion to absorb in case we don't collect enough to pay our bills. We still got a little bit of a cushion, and we can self-correct next year, so.
Creativity.
All right, Victor. Mr. Kidoga.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me here again. Before the update on the taxable values, I was concerned about coming up here because it seemed like a really cool kumbaya moment. I don't want to mess it up by talking about taxes. But unfortunately we have to, because we have to communicate what it's going to cost the homeowners and the taxpayers out there. So some of these slides have been updated, but we'll need to update them again as we gather more information regarding what the certified values truly are that we need to work with on the INS side. So just like we talked about last month, just right now, overall, we're actually in a very good debt position based off of the property values that you have to work with. You have relatively minimal debt. We have about $40 million outstanding in principal. And all of that will be paid off relatively quickly because the last bond program we did in 2011, we did 20-year bonds, and so that's a lot shorter than average, and so it helps you get into a good spot where you're back here, we need to do bonds, and so we have the more room and flexibility to do so. So overall, very good position. And as we talked about before, you're paying off this debt quickly. Your tax rate right now at $1.16 total tax rate, that's M&O, and your debt rate is already pretty low to begin with in the Coastal Bend area and also in going down Rio Grande Valley. The debt rate is, Phil talked about earlier, is 15 cents per $100 valuation. I have a lot of clients, a couple of them in the area that are all the way up to the legal cap of 50 cents per $100 valuation, and they wish they had the values that you all have to do bonds because they're kind of limited. And so this is all reflected not just by me, who obviously has a vested interest and is biased towards you, but also by Moody's rating agency, which rates us pretty highly at the AA3. But if you do a bond election and it's approved, we have the opportunity to use the state's AAA credit rating, which is the highest rating available through the Permanent School Fund Guarantee. So why am I saying this? Well, there shouldn't be a concern from your part, or if there's any concern from the taxpayer's part that, oh, well, we can't afford this, we're too poor. That's not the case. That's not true. You have a lot of good things happening here financially. You all have done a very good job taking care of your finances, considering the challenges you had each year about not getting paid basically in full by a couple of taxpayers. So you all are in a good spot to move forward if you decide to move forward. So with that said, what we were working with and is now outdated is that for the current year that we're in, we're working with $3.8 billion of property values on your interest and sinking fund side, the side that you pay your bonds on. We're under understanding past couple weeks that went up by about 20% to about $4.6 billion. And so that's what we're using to run our calculations that we're presenting to you here this evening. We're asked to run two scenarios, one for a $171 million bond program, the other one for a $165 million bond program. And so you can see this chart here that for a $171 million bond program, after it's all said and done, and I do use for some pretty conservative assumptions, the INS tax rate increase would be about 9.2 cents per $100 valuation. This is going to change and likely going to go up higher. But again, I just want to reiterate, we don't like the change that it's going up higher, but I just can't stress enough how pretty good position you all are because you can actually afford this sizable bond program. And it's not out of the room. It's not, definitely not even going to your cap that's allowed under state law of what you can do. For a $165 million bond program, about 8.5 cents. But again, that's going to likely change. As we talked about earlier, Ms. Boone indicated, this is just after it's all said and done. The taxpayer's not going to feel everything all at once. This is over a period of time here. And of course, the over 65 homestead exemptions, if they have that in place, will not feel the impact. And for some reason, the PDF here does not show on this file here, but this is why we printed this out here. And if you go to page 4, because I think it's pretty powerful here, we'll see what program difference this is. But if you go to page number 4, this is the tax rate history, something that you've seen before. You can see there in the light gray area, this is our maintenance and operation tax rate. You're currently in year 2022 tax year, we're at $1.01 per $100 valuation for M&O. Right now, 15 cents for your debt rate. That's in the dark green area there for $1.16, your total tax rate. Based off of the compression that the state's requiring you to do, that M&O tax rate is going to go down, rounding up to about 76 cents. And as Philip indicated earlier, we're proposing that you change it to 15 to 16 cents on your INS side. That's obviously it's your discretion. You could go up a penny or more or less. But overall, you're still going to provide your taxpayers with a 24-cent tax rate reduction for this upcoming year. The highest rate we were at was in 2016. We were at $1.41 per $100 valuation, so we're in a lot better spot now. So here, this is another look at your property values. Looking at what we were working with before was a $4.6 billion figure for INS, probably closer to about $3.8, $3.9 billion, but still pretty sizable and something you can still work with. You can see here the averages that we've grown, 8% last 10 years and 7%. That'll change slightly as we get the new number inputted there as well. Going over now to the next page, page number 6. Here, this is looking at a pie graph that you've seen before, just to iterate to you and also your taxpayers as you're communicating the bond program and who actually pays for the bonds. Assuming it's a 4.6 billion, but the numbers aren't going to change really because the top 10 taxpayers account for a vast majority of where you get your property values and revenues from for the repayment of debt. Right now, it's about 87% are the industrial or commercial taxpayers within the district. 8% of that, based on the property values that we're looking at, and could change slightly, is the single-family residences out there. These are the people that actually vote and pay based off of their homes. Last time I was here, that was closer to about 11%. Now it's about 8%. One of the reasons why it's down is because, as you know, the state passed a law, and it's subject to us approving it in November, to change the homestead exemption from 40,000 and increase it to 100,000. All these figures assume that on the residential side. We just need to get an adjustment on the commercial and industrial side and rerun these numbers for you. So the taxpayers are already getting the benefit of the changes in the law. So, as we talked about before, you all are in a unique position in that you have an optional local exemption that you offer your taxpayer, have been for a long time, and a handful of school districts that get a lot of their property values from industrial or commercial offer this, but not too many. It's still pretty unique and not very common. And so this is just an illustration as to how the homeowner, what they actually pay taxes on. And so if you're looking at a appraised value home of $200,000 with the new proposed law, you already have to give an exemption, a mandated exemption of $100,000, and then you add your 20% that locally you all decided many years ago to institute. That gives them another $40,000 off of their home tax bill. And so the net value that they're paying on after the local and state mandatory exemptions is $60,000 for a $200,000 appraised home. And then we did the same exercise for $300,000. If you go to the next page, assuming the numbers haven't changed, but for a $171 million bond program, we just wanted to show you what does that 9.2 cents do to a homeowner. And so if you're looking again at your appraised value of $200,000, you take off the mandated state and then the local optional homestead exemption on paying taxes on $60,000. Well, that 9.2 cents requires me to pay a higher tax bill, about $4.60 per month for a $171 million bond program. Now, we're going to change this because the tax impact is going to change based off of the updated values. But overall, if it's not 9.2, it could probably be about 12 to 13 cents instead. So about 4 penny difference there. So we'll update that for you and send it over for your review. We ran the same exercise for scenario 2. Of course, we're borrowing a little bit less and the tax impact slightly less, but you can see the impact over here. So overall, I know we're talking about very large numbers, 171 million, 165 million, but if you put it down to perspective and see what a homeowner actually pays taxes on after the exemptions, it becomes a little bit more manageable, a little bit something that you could put your head around as you're thinking about what it's going to actually cost me as a homeowner to pay for this bond program. So now going over to, if you want to refer to your handout here on page number 10, this is the comparison of where we used to be and where we could potentially be even with a $171 million bond program. You can see here the high point was 2016 at $1.41 for $100 valuation total tax rate. This year, going down to 22 and 23, we're looking at 76 cents for M&O, then 16 cents for INS for 92 cents total tax rate for next year. However, you won't have the bond election yet. If you do it in November, you've already set the tax rate for that year, so it'll be 92 cents. So as we talked about before, this is just an example. This is just assuming what if we broke up the bond authorization and sold it over a 2-year period. You can see how it's just incrementally going up. The yellow box there, that's your maintenance and operation tax. I don't know what's going to happen in future years, if they're going to require more compression, so that could potentially go down, but I don't want to assume that. I want to do worst case scenario. The red area there, the red shade, I was really trying to match the school colors. I don't know if I should use a red color when I'm talking about numbers. So
we don't like red.
Yeah, no, that's what I just saw that. So that's probably not a good color. selection, and it's my color blindness. So right now, we're at 16 cents. If you adopt that tax rate coming up, and then you have a bond, and then a year from now, as you're setting the following year's tax rate, by that point, you would have known how much bonds we have to work with, how many we've sold during the next fiscal year, and how to plan for it. As Mr. Van Matry said, we might not need, here I'm assuming that we sell half the first year, then half the next year, and you can see it's incrementally going up. That INS tax rate is 16 cents and 21 cents, and then slightly up at 25 cents. And even if it's, another 3 cents, you're looking at, let's just say at the high peak, you're looking at $1.04, but that's assuming we have $171 million that we're working with to address your projects. That's still a lot lower than what we're in the current year right now at $1.16. So that's just, again, we just want to put in perspective. We'll be sure to provide multiple electronic versions so that you could actually put it on the screen here. And so, again, just try and put in perspective, even with the $171 million bond program, we're still going to be at a lower tax rate position than even today. And of course, we credit the state a little bit for that, just with the compression. But not too much because, they're still making school districts to operate and run their schools. This next slide, I'm not going to talk too much in detail about it. You've already covered it. If it's more than academic, there's 6 other categories there that the state requires you to break out. That was already covered by your architect. And then the next to last page is just a timeline. The deadline to call the election is next Monday. For presenting this election on the ballot for your taxpayers. I think there's 14 or 18 constitutional amendments that are going to be coming up first. I think the city has a couple of things out there, not bond related necessarily, and then the school is typically the last on the ballot. And so as they're communicating, I just want to let them know, don't get fatigued, that, keep on going, and you'd appreciate the support. The last page is just a summary of everything we talked about. Of course, we're going to update the tax impact once we get a better figure as to the certified values that we're working with for your INS side. But overall, we're still going to provide whatever those figures are. We're still providing a 24-cent tax rate reduction. The bond will be a lot less than that, so overall we'll still be in a pretty good spot looking into that. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have you ever been in a situation where a bond the size of this one, even at its highest impact in the tax rate, has overall seen a reduction like we would see with M&O going down?
And not necessarily just because of M&O, but, as you all know me, I'm pretty conservative, so even my numbers here are conservative. And even in the 2011 bond program, we use conservative figures. We actually never went up to that maximum tax rate increase that we told the voters. And just, things kind of happened in our favor. The interest rates got better as we started selling bonds. We broke it up over a 3-year period. When you break up the bond authorization over a 3-year period, and it doesn't have to be 3, it could be 2, it could be 4, whatever you want. Really what you want is you want to try to match your spend down of the bond proceeds with your project. And as you move along, it could be that it's not 3 years, it's probably 4 years or something. So with that said, if you break it up more than just 1 year, not sell it all at once, that helps you manage the tax rate a little bit better because as you sell bonds incrementally, you know what property values we're working with and how to structure the debt to try to minimize that tax impact on your taxpayers as much as possible. So I'm hoping that, once we update this, that, they'll be slightly conservative still, and we won't have to increase it as much.
Great information.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good, Victor. Thank you very much again.
And I guess, like I said, my understanding, our certified values are gonna change. I'm just gonna calculate what a more realistic collection percentage is gonna be. If the Hills is gonna be 100% of their 22 values. That's what I need to determine. First thing in the morning. But you'll see the notice in the notice will be in the Caller Times Friday. Our tax rate is determined by the state, and we can go up to 16.77 for the INS rate.
Okay.
I would, additional exemptions for disability and 65 and older. Is that possible for our district at this time?
Is it possible, the mechanism is available to the school district to do that? I'm not an expert on the process because I'm not an attorney and how to get that going. From my understanding, it doesn't require a vote unless there's a petition in your community to present it and requires you to vote on it. But it is something that the board could act on in terms of where we're at on the fiscal year and budgeting. I'm not sure if that's a component where the attorneys would have to opine on that, if there's still time to do that. I've been doing this 22 years and, on average, I probably represent about 50 school districts. As I said earlier, the optional homestead that you already offer, the 20%, is not very common and unique. And so in my 22 years, I've actually not been a part of a school district that's wanting to increase the exemptions even more. And I think the reason why is since I've been in the school business or in the bond business for 22 years, since that time, and there's various charts and data about it, that if you look at how the state used to fund school districts and the percentage levels they used to fund them on the operating and also on the debt side, even with all this compression and them saying they're going to make up the difference overall, the state's participation level and what they fund versus what the local taxpayers fund has been diminishing pretty steadily over that time. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that I think most of my school district clients aren't looking to add any additional exemption than what's already mandated by the state. As you know, the over 65, they already mandate that those are frozen. One of the things that's on the constitutional ballot for November is not only to increase the homestead exemption from $40,000 to $100,000, which is going to pass. The other one is that in the past few years that they've required school districts to reduce and compress their maintenance and operation tax rate. Each time they seem to forget to say, if you already had the over 65 homestead exemption for the last 10 years and then it's compressed even more, there's no automatic mechanism to recalculate and refreeze all those over 65. So one of the things that we're going to vote on here in November is that if they continue compression in the future, that automatic recalculation and refreezing of the over 65 homesteads that were already in place will get reduced further to reflect that everybody else's tax rate has gone down. So, that's a nice way of saying the state is already kind of helping the over 65 even more. But if there's additional that you want to offer, that's obviously y'all's discretion and y'all's decision. I know I'm long-winded here. It's just I'm really nervous and I'm pretty conservative. It's pretty tough right now and challenging for Texas school districts because it seems like the state is making it more and more challenging, whether it's bonds or operating and how much revenue you're working with, how much are they participating in, which is starting to decline. So I guess that's a long way of saying that I'd be a little hesitant. I know it's very noble over 65 and disability, but it's just, that's just less revenue that you're going to be able to work with to educate your kids or pay bonds and everything. But that's just my opinion. I'm not the elected official like you all are, and so that's why you guys get to make that tough decision and not me. That's just my 2 cents. It's probably
Yeah,
a little
I
long.
guess, because at first, we were heavily a recapture district. I didn't know if that would affect the amount we were giving back. Philip said this year, though, we're not going to give back much of anything to the state of Texas. So I was wondering if an additional exemption for 65 and older would help alleviate, or keeping our money local and not giving it out to the state. And then also, second comment, our 20% additional homestead that Tolosa Midway has, amazing for all residential owners in our community. If someone is 65 and older and their home is below 300,000, you actually get more of a tax break in Calallen ISD, where they have an additional $50,000 for 65 and older and disabled, not just the generic 10. So I was hoping we could be competitive in that regard. But I guess I was told to ask him, so he doesn't know.
Well, I think in the conversations Victor and I have had, and I think what he said tonight is, it wouldn't be in your financial advisor's role to recommend that.
Yeah, if it was up to me, what I do is I see, I want as much revenue sources possible in the pot there, in the bucket, because the more I have, the less of a tax rate you have to set on everybody else. And so, by you giving up revenue to a segment, that means somebody else is gonna pick it up, whether it's other taxpayers, individuals, or corporations. So, it's hard for me to say, you should
I guess
give
I'm
up
saying
more
the
revenue.
less we give away. I would like to know the maximum amount TM can do, not affecting our local taxpayers, but affecting what is given to the state.
So that's more on the M&O side. On the INS side, we don't share anything with the state. We keep
Correct.
it all local here.
I would say currently, and you'll see next Monday, another, Omar came out with another template with more fine-tuned with the new things, and so the bottom number that doesn't change, but what changed, and you'll see on Monday, is when I ran it on his version 3, like I said, the bottom number didn't change, but it showed us not having any recapture, but the tax revenue and state revenue. The latest version, the bottom number doesn't change, but it shows us having to send back or have recapture of about $1 million. But it's, like I said, the bottom number's not changing. When you take taxes plus state revenue minus recapture, that number's not changing. It just, he tweaked something, and so it looks different, but the bottom number doesn't change. But right now, unless they change something, like I said before, whatever our ADA is at the top, we're gonna get about $10,300 per ADA. And it's gonna get divided out, but based upon the number of special pops that we have, but the pie is gonna be ADA times 10,300 approximately. That's what we're gonna have. And if we collect whatever that number is, take ADA times 10,300, whatever that number is, if we collect more taxes than that, we're gonna have to send it back, no matter what our,
Unless they change the basic allowance.
unless they change the basic allotment. Right now, it's not gonna change.
And we don't
Correct.
control that.
That's
We don't
correct.
control that.
Legislature.
So I don't think bringing in less tax revenue is not gonna affect the M&O side unless they change the funding formula. It's gonna require us to raise our INS rate because we're gonna be collecting less money for INS purposes. We'd have to maybe adjust it. It's not gonna be some great percentage, but the INS rate would have to be, if we're taking in less INS money,
Gotta
the
make it
INS
up
rate would have to go up to offset that.
Yeah, and that's probably why I didn't express correctly too, especially there's been, I guess it's been a little challenging to say the least in the last few years with one of your taxpayers not paying based on their property values. And so it seemed like, I thought we were in the clear with that, with the most recent certified values they're working with, because, we thought they were gonna start paying on that. Turns out that's not the case, so that's just, another more significant challenge on the INS side. So that's where I'm a little leery about saying, oh, we should do some more, because we already have this continued challenge with their challenging with the property values and what they actually pay on it. So that's where me on the financial advisor side, it just makes it a little bit difficult for me to say, you should do that, considering you have other challenges in bringing in revenue to help pay this debt. So, we're talking about $171 million. Initially, we thought it was being about 9.2 cents because of the challenge and the clarification, I guess. that's another 3 to 4 cents that everybody else has to pick up, for the bond program. And so I think it just makes it more challenging if we're introducing other exemptions, but,
So bottom line is, from your perspective, it is not in the school district's best interest to offer more than what we already have to taxpayers, to homeowners rather. It's not in the best interest. I mean,
It's not in the best interest in that if you give I'm just talking about the INS side. Because we don't share that with the state, this is what we used to pay the bonds and try to mitigate the tax rate for everybody else. And so I guess if we give more away, it just means that, you're gonna have to increase the tax rate by slightly.
But we're talking about 8% is residential. We're talking about an even smaller percentage of that, 1 or maybe less than 2%, which that would significantly impact the taxpayer, but not significantly impact the community. And so I understand your hypotheticals on how it would affect overall our financials, but it's minuscule in the grand scheme of things, the amount of taxpayers we have in that bracket.
And I'm just catching on here, I mean, listening, but what's the advantage to doing it?
So if you're over 65 and older and you do have 0 ties to the school district, and you're going in and you're one of the 500 people that voted no to the bond last time, now we're adding an additional tax break to you. That's one positive thing. The other positive thing is just who likes to pay taxes and getting more and remaining competitive with other school districts in our area. Good PR and then.
I got you.
I guess I wasn't familiar. You said Cal Allen has something additional?
They
for
have
over
$50,000 additional homestead exemption for 65 and older and disabled. TM's 20% is better than that if your home is greater than $300,000. If your home is appraised less than that value, then Cal Allen is more competitive than Tulosa Midway for that age group. Okay.
But it just depends on what you want to offer, because I think the minimum, if you do that, the minimum you offer is like $3,000, and, there's about 900 something over 65 homesteads that have that exemption in place right now. So right there, just at the minimum, you're talking, $2.7 million in revenue that, we'll have to make up somewhere else. Obviously broken up between M&O and INS and everything, but just, it just depends on how much you want to give. I know that the minimum, if you do it, is $3,000. Of course, you could go up whatever you want to.
But the burden of that is made up with other tax dollars from the majority of the people that are paying the taxes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It has to come from somewhere. I mean, you gotta get a break here, but the other people.
The smaller group gets the discount, but the larger group absorbs the change.
Yeah, and it's just not, the homeowners, but also, the corporations when,
But your point is,
It could be less than, it could be,
your point is, it's
0.02
such a low, it's such
I
a
got you. No, I hear
low
what you're-
fiscal impact.
yes.
But, I mean, low fiscal impacts in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, what's that?
Well, if we're already negative, any impact is pretty big. I mean, if our projection for next year is negative 2.5.
That's on the M&O side. Not INS.
Yeah, right?
The budget is M&O side.
Voter-approved debts on the other side, that's what Victor's in referencing.
And I just had one last question. And this is going back to the bond presentation, the maintenance on the Performing Arts Center, like that's under maintenance. So maintenance to an auditorium, why does that have to be separate? Like, why are we viewing, or is it because we're just calling like intermediate stuff Performing Arts
Let's
Center?
see,
We're talking about this list.
Yeah.
what page is that on?
11.
11.
Was it the state requires?
Yeah.
So, but in our maintenance, I guess, spell out, we say Performing Arts Center.
It depends on what you use a performing arts center for. What this, the intent of the law was that some districts have a performing arts center, but they don't actually teach anything in there. It's just more for like community use after hours. I think my understanding is.
Well, we should,
y'all-
I guess, rename this bullet point then.
That's one of the, what we talked about with Rose, right, that it was,
Yes.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, you could rename it if you like, but.
The attorneys will, we will have bond attorneys that'll vet everything.
Yeah, they go through it.
Very good.
So just for the record, I love over 65 people, so. I just think about dollars here and I get a little nervous.
We all do.
Yeah.
Paul and I are the only
School.
over 65 in the room, I'm sure.
Some of us are getting closer.
There's three of us in here.
There's three?
Jamie, myself, and you.
He's not over 65. No way,
I'm probably the oldest one in this room, but
no way.
thank you.
But she doesn't look it.
Thank you for the information.
Yes.
We'll be obviously visiting with administration to rerun some numbers once we get some clarification.
More information.
Thank you, Victor. Have a safe trip
Yeah,
home.
thank you for,
Yes.
good to see everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, future meetings are the following Monday, August 21st, which is our regular board meeting, and then August 28th, which is another special called board meeting. We like having dinner together on Monday nights now.
Yeah.
When does Monday Night Football start?
Hey, don't have one tonight?
It is Monday, August 14th, 2023. There is no more business. It is 7:37. Do I have a motion to
I
adjourn the
make a
meeting?
motion that we adjourn, please.
Okay, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
All
Thank you,
right, I
Leo.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries 6-0. It is 7:37 and this meeting is now adjourned.